Hey folks, it's Swank Ivy, and this is Letters to an Asexual number 49. The letter itself is pretty short. I don't know how long the rambling that I will give you afterwards is going to get, but I guess we'll just find out together. Just so you know, this might be the last video that I'm going to make while living in this apartment, which I'm really sad about. Because I'm going to be moving sometime in September, and it's August now while I'm making this video. So if I can get one more video in before I leave, it will be nice to have a nice round number, 50 videos made in this apartment over the course of 10 years. But I don't know if that's going to happen. I like to make a video every month, so I owe you guys one in September, but I just don't know if it's going to be here or there. I haven't found a new place yet, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, if you wanted to know the reason why I'm moving, it's my neighbors are really loud. My upstairs neighbors won't stop stomping around, moving furniture at 1:30 in the morning. You know, they have a kid that runs up and down the hallway all the time, jumps off of furniture. I hear people screaming and just slamming doors and slamming drawers and just all kinds of ridiculous stuff, and I've made documentation of it actually, and tried for a very long time to get my apartment people to help with that. But they wouldn't, and you know, they were nice about it sometimes. You know, most of the time they were sympathetic about it, but then they didn't do anything about it. Eventually one of the managers told me that when my lease is up, they can move me to a second floor apartment so that I won't have this problem anymore, which, you know, kind of made me think they think the problem is that I'm complaining, not that they're actually ridiculously loud. I think that they just don't believe me, even though I took videos of it, you know, and showed them what time it was on the clock, the ridiculous times they were making these noises until, and you can literally hear them dragging tables or heavy chairs along the floor dozens of times after midnight every single day. So I don't mean to ramble too much, but what's interesting is that kind of ties into the topic that I'm going to talk about today, where if you complain about something, sometimes people consider your complaint to be a bigger problem than what you're complaining about, and they will blame you for the way you complain about what you're experiencing. So why don't I go ahead and get into the letter. Like I said, it's a very short letter, but I got it on OkCupid, and it was from a person who I will warn you before I start it that, you know, he uses a crappy term for people who are mentally ill before he goes into insulting me. So this is what this person said, sending me a message on OkCupid. Hello, wow. Besides the fact that your profile is a blinking red alert for psycho, I do want to know what you mean by being asexual. He puts it in quotes. Are you a plant or a hermaphrodite? Another nice word. Ugh. And honestly, what are you doing on a dating site with your litany of lamentations? Unless you're just using this as a forum, as your blog for emotional and frustration release. But I digress. Please explain the asexual description. I'm a knowledge seeker, and I need to understand what I've just come across in your profile. This is how I responded. Knowledge seekers would know how to type a well-established, widely documented sexual orientation into a search engine if they actually want knowledge. What you want sounds a lot more like you enjoy demanding someone spend their time and energy educating you after you opened by insulting them and setting a combative tone. the very boring and ignorant misrepresentation of OkCupid as strictly a dating site that I have no business being on if I don't use it like you do is relatively common among people who think like you, but I have absolutely no interest in repeating myself. My intention on the site is listed on the profile you mocked, but I guess it would be tiring indeed for you to trouble yourself reading things, when you could bust through like a lumbering Kool-Aid man and bleat that I explain especially for you instead. Negging is boring. Snotting at people because you personally don't understand them is boring as well as entitled. And conversations that start the way you have failed to start this one are so boring, there needs to be a new next-level synonym for boring to describe it. I am blocking further messages from you and will not be aware if you try to respond to this, but if you love the sound of your own bratty rage as you talk to yourself, I guess at least you'll get something out of further conversation with the void. And that's the end of the conversation because I did indeed block him. I like to tell people that I'm blocking them on OkCupid because otherwise they usually will send messages and have no idea that I can't see them because the system doesn't tell them that they can't send me messages, so they're just sending them into the darkness, and, they think they've gotten the last word or whatever, but, I would like people to know that I'm not listening, that they've lost their privilege to talk to me. Anyway, so, like I said, I'm going to kind of tie this into what I was talking about with complaining about my neighbors, and now I feel like my apartment complex feels that it's more of a problem that I'm complaining than that there's actually a problem that needed to be addressed. So you will have heard me say in that conversation that I don't have any obligation to educate this person. And you may have heard that in other contexts as well. It's not my job to educate you. I believe that 100%. But as an educator, as someone who has taken on the mantle of educating people, essentially, about asexuality, maybe you think it's a peculiar thing for me to say it's not my job to educate you. I mean, granted, nobody's paying me for it unless they're buying my book or paying me to give a lecture, which, both of those things happen. But, on the internet, people who want to know more about asexuality are not paying a salary to me, so I'm speaking the truth when I say it's not my job to educate them. But most of the time, I like to. I love to explain to people who really are knowledge seekers, as that guy so failingly referred to himself as. I like to give people information about asexuality. I like to help them understand more about it, what our experience is, even if it kind of goes over the line a little bit so that I feel like maybe they're interrogating me or they're putting me under a microscope. I've been in that position enough that I'm not very sensitive to it, and I kind of understand that with some of these people, when they encounter it for the first time, they don't have the skills to figure out how to sensitively engage an educator and how to ask questions so that the person that they're asking for education from feels comfortable, but I can stand that most of the time. However, when I say it's not my job to educate someone, normally the reason I'm saying that is that I feel like the person is sitting down in front of me with their arms crossed saying, "Convince me." I don't want to convince you. If you're not here willingly, if you're not open to the possibility that I'm going to teach you something that you need to know about how the world works and how people's orientations work. Can you hear my neighbors? It's after 11 o'clock, by the way, if you heard that. They're home, so you'll hear them some more, probably. Anyway, sorry for the interruption. So, when I say I'm not obligated to educate someone, normally I'm saying that because I feel like the person believes that it is my job to convince them, or else they are entitled to treat us badly. That the default should be to disbelieve us, to condescend to us, to assume we don't exist, or that we're looking for attention, or that whatever they assume about us is, that it's automatically true, whatever they wanted to believe about us, unless we will sit down with them and devote our time and attention and care to making sure that they understand. To sit there and coddle them and feel like we're being done a favor by them listening to us, which most of the time they don't really even listen. They're just coughing up all kinds of objections to us, cross-examining us, feeling like they have the right to interrogate us with these, almost like we're on trial, that unless we can prove to their satisfaction that we exist, or that we really are experiencing what we say we are, then obviously we don't, and that entitles them to treat us really badly. And I don't think that they understand how badly they are treating us when they do things like open messages like the one that I just read to you, by saying, so it's obvious that you're insane, that you're a psycho, but I need you to explain this to me anyway because I just don't understand it. And it's probably one of these other misnomers or gross terms for other people that I feel entitled to disrespect however I want to. It's almost like they think these terms exist because these people exist in the world, but they're never going to meet one. That they're never going to talk to someone who actually uses those terms as part of their identity. That they'll never have occasion to need to be sensitive to anyone. And it's frustrating to talk to people who come at me with that worldview, because I guess they really think that I should care more than I do about whether they believe, and that it's all on my shoulders, that if I don't properly educate them and make them feel very secure while I'm doing it, that they will forever have a bad taste in their mouth about asexuality and anyone who identifies that way, that I can ruin it for everyone of my orientation, completely ignorant of the fact that that is a bigoted view to have of anyone, like to say that one person is going to be what you consider to be the face of asexuality for the rest of time as far as you're concerned. If you talk to one bad apple, then that justifies considering all of us to be represented by that. Now, I've done plenty of speaking on the subject of asexuality and other related concepts like aromanticism and virginity and other things that I associate with my identities. But I don't ever feel like I'm speaking for a group. Like I have not termed myself a spokesperson for any group of people who share my orientation. I can say anytime, any place, that my views are my own. I can also say that they do jive with the majority of the community most of the time, because I've listened to my community and I try to be very inclusive with my messages. And a lot of times in places that they don't agree with me, that some of my community does not agree with me, it's because they are less inclusive than I am, and they say, oh, well, I don't think gray sexual or demisexual people should be considered part of the asexual spectrum. There shouldn't be a spectrum. Or maybe they think that asexual people shouldn't be able to call themselves asexual if they have sex, stuff like that. So of course I can't speak for them. I can't define asexuality for those people, but I don't have the right to define things for my community. I can speak from my experience, and I can say that a lot of people in my community agree with me, but I'm not the king, I'm not the queen, I'm not the monarch. So I acknowledge that. So why would I be able to be held responsible for how this person feels about asexual people in general, like as a group, if I say something that pisses them off. Generally, people will not adopt that worldview unless they have some investment in wanting it to be that way. They want to see us as brats, they want to see us as attention seeking or unreasonable or someone that they can just write off. They like it when we prove them right. So I don't have time for that. Like, I used to give people like that so much more of my time, and I'm very tired of it now. Part of it is that I just, I don't feel like I can say it even one more time for somebody who is not grateful for the opportunity to learn from someone like me. If they're going to talk to me like I owe it to them, I'm very inclined to just block them on whatever platform they're contacting me on. It's not rewarding for me to put so much elbow grease into trying to win somebody over when I feel like I had to pry basic decorum out of them, like that I had to sit there and do conflict resolution. I had to mollify them. I had to sit them in a corner and do like disciplinary measures to get them to stop attacking me before I could be permitted to educate them. And it's like, it used to be that I felt like it was worth it, but on top of not having time anymore and not having energy anymore, I also recognize those signs earlier, and I know which signs usually lead to people who will refuse to listen or will be looking for loopholes, or they just want to fight or they want to troll me. And also, trolls, when it comes to asexuality, they sound identical to people who aren't trolling but really believe these things. So it's like, I don't really see the point in saying, oh, he's just a troll, don't engage. It's like, a lot of the people that are actually asking these questions are not trolls. I'm listening to the neighbors. I can't sleep when they're doing this because they shake the house, so I can't even use earplugs. It's probably not as obvious on video, but they're being very loud and there's a baby crying. I haven't complained about the baby crying because babies cry, but children stomping like that at 11:30 at night, no, it's not okay. Anyway, digression. So anyway, going back to the whole connection with the neighbors thing, some people have said, well, if you're not willing to deal with some of the pain of how awful these people are, and you're not willing to educate, and you're going to say things like, it's not my job to educate you, then really you're the problem. You're the one who doesn't want to be understood. You're the prima donna who just wants everybody to treat you special without having to do any of the work. That's completely not true. But again, it comes from people who they don't want to have to do any of the work involved in educating themselves. I don't believe for a second that that guy was a knowledge seeker. He said that because he wanted to identify himself as logical and scientific, and you've heard me go into these conversations before with people who think that they're being rational and think that they're the evidence-based one. But people who are actually interested in what evidence says are going to look it up. They're going to say, oh, well, I think this girl sounds off her rocker, as this guy clearly thought I was not mentally sound, as he opened by calling me a psycho. As if, like, that's obvious. It would obviously be an insult to call someone mentally ill. I mean, I have never been diagnosed as having any mental illnesses, and I don't identify as someone who has a mental illness, but it's not something to be ashamed of if you are. So really bothers me when people use that like a shaming thing to like condescend to someone immediately and put them in like a lower tier to talk down to them. But then on top of that, he tried to act like he has some kind of upper hand when it comes to believing in asexuality, that I have to make a case. The case has been made. I'm one of many people who has written an actual book on this topic, and if you don't want to go to the library, or you don't want to buy an ebook or a hardcover copy of a pretty good book, if you don't want to do those things, there are shorter articles, there's Wikipedia, there's plenty of online free information. If you want to go to a place like Avon, if you want to go to a place like Asexuality Archive, one of my pals runs that. There's plenty of information. Plus, it's not all written by asexual people. There are asexuality researchers like Anthony Bogart and Lori Brotto who have published lots of studies on this topic. And it is partly through their efforts that our orientation has become understood by the people who tend to research things like this. When they heard that supposedly 1% of the population was kind of identifying as a none of the above and realizing, well, nobody's studied them, they said, that is a problem. We need to understand who these people are, understand what they're going through in society, and accept and acknowledge that they're part of the spectrum of human sexuality. And that's what a scientist does. A scientist doesn't say, well, I've never heard of this, or that's never been studied, so therefore they must be psychos, or they must be people looking for attention, or they must be suffering from a disease. They must be dealing with something other than what they say they're dealing with, and externally determining what those people's reality is without talking to them, without talking to any of the people who have studied those populations, without even understanding that these studies have taken place, that anyone's asked these questions. And here they are, strolling into my inbox, pretending to be knowledge seekers, and asking a really ignorant question from the perspective of someone like me who has spent all this time educating people. I just think, how willfully ignorant must you be to be talking to someone on the internet and not open another tab before you hit send and Google what you're talking about? Like, that is willful ignorance. That's a nice word for what that is. What I also see it as is really thick entitlement, because they think they can walk up to anybody who identifies as a thing and say, all right, tell me all these things that I want to know, and by the way, I'm going to disrespect you right from the get-go, to make sure that we set the right tone for this. And I don't believe you for a second when you say that you're a knowledge seeker with that kind of tone. So I don't necessarily expect people to be super polite either. I understand that not everybody is going to beg for my attention or apologize for asking questions. I don't really expect to have my butt kissed either. I can have a normal conversation with a person who, might occasionally say something accidentally rude. They might accidentally say something that they don't realize is ignorant or is a really common question that they really probably should have Googled. But the difference is the tone of their conversation with me. Now, I'm not gonna say, this isn't the same thing as like, oh, I'm tone policing them, because what usually people mean when they say you're getting tone policed is that they're looking for a reason to reject what you're saying because of how you're saying it. But when I'm being asked to perform a service by someone who is opening by disrespecting me, I feel that that person isn't really invested in me answering them. And, since they are depending on me to educate them, if that's what they're asking for, I do expect, like, at least just basic respect. I certainly don't expect to be insulted in the same message where I'm being asked to perform a favor for someone. And again, when you educate people as often as I do, you learn to recognize that that tone of someone who is not there to learn, but is there to confirm a negative bias about people like you. So that was a classic example of a person that that's what they sound like. If they sound more like they want you to trot out the evidence and that they're delighting in the idea of inconveniencing you, then you know that you're talking to someone who isn't really after education, isn't really after answers, and certainly isn't logically minded as they'll be pretending to be, and they certainly aren't knowledge seekers. The knowledge is out there, and if you were seeking, you would have found it very quickly because it is not hidden. So that's going to be it for this video, and I guess we'll see in a little while whether Letters to an Asexual number 50 is going to be filmed in this apartment or not. Thanks for listening.